Seen it? Yes. Have you read it?
Activists against HIV/AIDS in the Kigezi Sub-region are questioning the government's failure to activate the implementation of the AIDS Trust Fund. This was raised during the stakeholders meeting on HIV/AIDS fight from Kigezi Sub-region in preparation for the World's AIDS Day celebrations slated for 1st December. In 2014, the Parliament of Uganda enacted the HIV Prevention and Control Act. This law was operationalized in 2018, enabling the government to levy 2% of total annual tax levies on alcohol and soft drinks to generate shillings 9.149 billion to be channeled to the AIDS Trust Fund. Activists say that advocacy for HIV/AIDS prevention is struggling to be effectively achieved. The executive director of Kigezi Women in Development, a community-based organization in Kigezi advocating for HIV prevention and human rights, Florence Tuhirire, says that when external funders were still available, it would be very easy for them to mobilize HIV victims and sensitize them on how to live with the virus, as well as linking them with the health service providers for easy access to drugs. Tumihirigwe further says that the HIV Trust Fund should be activated as quick as possible because the current status of no funding to civil society organizations has crippled all the efforts to implement their goals.
Even the resources which are being released were channeled now to fight COVID-19. So you find other health issues like HIV, like sexual reproductive health, even GBV, which escalated during the COVID-19 lockdown, are not being funded. They are not a first priority. They are not priorities to the donors, and even including the government. So there is need for increased or resource mobilization to fund HIV, because COVID-19 did not stop HIV infections or effects, and it did not. It in fact, instead of decreasing on the GBV, it escalated the GBV cases, which tripled, and they are not funded at all.
Eunice Kabagambe, a counselor at Kambuga Hospital and the coordinator of people living with HIV/AIDS in Kanungu district, says that the failure of the HIV Trust Fund to be affected has seriously crippled their activities like transport, facilitation, while checking on their patients.
Twagamba funding turagamba obuyambi ningo esente zitwatutungaga okugira ngo zitwere okwirukanza emirimo ya network. Emirimo ya network harimo okurundana abantu, okwegesa, okutambura no kukola ebindi no kusapotinga abagenzi bitu kugira ngo bamere omubazi kurungi, okubegesa kugira ngo baze kwekebeza n'ibindi byingi. Konka ubwire ko bwagenzire buragenda. Aho kasente ako kakijaga kutuyamba kwirukanza imirimo ya office hamwe no gukora imirimo nk'ejo kandi kija tikabaho.
The monitoring and evaluation officer at Uganda Network of AIDS Service Organizations, Silas Cheritot, says that unless the release of this fund is not implemented, the government's fast-track initiative on ending HIV/AIDS in Uganda by 2030 that was launched in June 2017 may not be achieved.
Definitely. When that fund is activated, but of course UNASO as a self-coordinating entity will be able to tap into that fund and empower our members in the HIV response, not only to HIV response, the sexual reproductive health rights, TB, malaria, and GBV. They will also be able to benefit from that fund, being our members.
The head of the private sector department at Uganda AIDS Commission, Hope Murungi, admits that the government is aware of the delay to activate the HIV Trust Fund. Murungi says that donors withdrew funding to focus on international priorities like climate change and COVID-19. Mulungi further says that discussions are still ongoing between relevant ministries to have the HIV/AIDS Trust Fund start operating.
Yes, it is true. It is true that HIV/AIDS is no longer attracting a lot of funding, but what we have been working through is to see how, as a country, we can raise support locally, and the discussions are ongoing to operationalize the AIDS Trust Fund as a basket funding for Uganda. And also the other encouragement and a kind of approach that we've been giving to our civil society organizations is to integrate in the already existing programs, because HIV is a cross-cutting issue. It affects every sector, it affects every dimension of life. So to integrate is one of the best approaches that we can sustain the response of HIV in our country.
Uganda has about 1.4 million people living with HIV in Uganda. According to the latest statistics from Uganda AIDS Commission, out of the total 1.2 million are on drug. This year's National World AIDS Day celebrations on 1st December will be in Rukunji District, and President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni is expected to be the chief guest. A story by Jorina Namara, Nobati Nyamhachi for Kigezi TV.